Hi, Acadiana. I'm meteorologist Dave Baker. We've got a winter weather update here, a little bit of a special on Acadiana weather today, as a lot of folks have been talking about the potential for some winter weather across the region going into next week. Now, you don't have anything to worry about today, tomorrow, or the weekend, or even Martin Luther King Day. We're really going to be looking closer at Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. So do keep in mind, we're only at Wednesday. So most of what we're talking about here is nearly a week out. So the models are kind of coming into agreement, but at the same time, we're still several days out. So we're going to see a lot of changes. So nothing in that forecast has been cemented just quite yet. So I'm going to kind of go over different models, let you know the different pieces of the puzzle that are trying to come together, and then try to figure out what we might or might not expect as we go into the early part of next week. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the national satellite picture just to kind of give you an idea of what's going on right now. We've got a bit of a trough that's out here over the parts of the Gulf of Mexico, and that's going to kind of zip its way off toward the east, and that's what's been bringing us the clouds, and we'll probably see some widely scattered showers, but most of the action is going to stay in the offshore waters. Next, we've got another bit of a disturbance that's going to kind of come around from this direction and then kind of slide its way off toward the east like that. That is going to come in Friday night and into Saturday, and that is going to help to bring all of this cold air that's up to the north farther down to the south. So that's going to be the initial push of that Arctic air. So the rest of this week is really going to be relatively quiet. We've got some clouds and some showers that will be out there for today. Tomorrow we'll get a little break in between systems, so some sunshine. And then Friday we'll see the clouds increasing. But temperatures are actually going to be quite mild going into Friday and Saturday. And Friday night, Saturday morning is when we'll see the better chances for thunderstorms. And the colder stuff won't actually start to roll in here until about Sunday. So keep that in mind for your winter weather preps, especially if you're going to be preparing just for the extreme cold that could be coming in next week. The second half of this week is going to be much better to do that. It's actually going to be somewhat mild outside, and therefore you'll be a little more comfortable if you've got to wrap some pipes or you got to move some plants and things like that. You're going to want to get that done probably by the end of the day Saturday. So this is what our upper level pattern looks like right now, and we're starting to see the release of the polar vortex that's up here, and it's going to kind of rotate around a little bit farther to the south. At the same time, you got this huge ridge of high pressure here, a 1050 high that's over the Canadian prairies, and that's going to start to make its push off toward the southeast. So by the time we get into the midweek of next week, notice that big ridge of high pressure is going to be moving across the middle part of the country, and the upper levels are really going to be dipping in. So this 1051 high, that is an indication of some very deep cold air that's going to be drifting southward. And because the vortex is all the way up here, you're basically going to have everything spilling southward directly at Louisiana. So that's why we're more concerned about the extreme cold conditions coming in. Earlier, the forecasts were looking like we were going to hit some upper 20s to around 30, kind of similar to what we saw with the last cold snap. But now it's starting to look like this cold plunge is going to be a little bit colder, a little bit deeper, and it's also going to last a little bit longer. So we might have some prolonged periods of time where we're going to be seeing some freezing temperatures. So let's just take a look. Remember I told you that the forecast highs for the remainder of this week are probably going to be at or slightly above normal, but by the time we get into Sunday, things are going to be turning much more blustery, and rather than 70s that we're expecting on Saturday, highs on Sunday probably won't push out of the 40s, and it's going to be quite windy as well. And then as that Arctic air mass settles in, this is a look at Wednesday morning's temperature. So this is a week from today, and you can see just about all of Louisiana and all of Acadiana, according to the GFS model, we'll have our temperatures dropping down into the mid-20s. So you're starting to get into that problem area. When you get into the low to mid-20s in South Louisiana, you start having the issues with the cold weather stuff with your plants, your pets, and your pipes too, especially over central Louisiana. If you get some of those extended or those exposed pipes that are out there and you get an extended period of more than 12 hours of freezing temperatures, that's when you can start to have the problem. So Most of Acadiana, if you do have exposed pipes, you are going to want to go ahead and take care of those this time around before the weekend is over. So let's try to talk about the winter weather, because everybody wants to know about the snow. And I'll tell you, the last system that came through was forecasting some significant amount of snow across Acadiana, and then a week out, and then when the storm finally made its way through, we were looking at more of a dump of winter weather from Dallas up to Little Rock. And the model, when it came to the amounts of snow, were pretty much spot on. But it was the location of where the snow fell. 7 days ahead, it was calling for a Gulf Coast snow, and then of course it verified over parts of the Arklatex. So it ended up missing it by about 250 to 300 miles. But that is expected when you're talking about a forecast model that's 7 days out. So I want to go through a couple of different models here, and I'm going to go through the differences in the different model runs. So the GFS from late last night, this is the run from Tuesday morning through Friday morning of next week. And you can see there is winter weather that does move across the region. It looks like it's snow, probably some sleet, and then you got rain closer to the coast. This was the earlier run last night. The first run that we had early this morning was trending a little bit more toward rain. So you can see the difference. There's the one from last night. Here is the one from this morning, and you can see that not only are we seeing more precipitation over the Gulf waters, but we're also seeing more rain over the Acadiana area. So the newest model that has come down really doesn't show a whole lot coming up Tuesday and Wednesday, but another system wants to try to fire up going into the latter part of the week. But you can see that the bulk of the Tuesday-Wednesday event on the GFS that's just run is showing more of a Gulf of Mexico rain event. And then another system would come in behind it on Friday of next week and generally bring a pretty good rain across the Acadiana. So even though the GFS yesterday was putting down some ridiculous amounts of snow, it is starting to back off a little bit more. And that's what we saw with the last winter storm that moved across the Mid-South. It was showing more of a Gulf of Mexico hit, and then it started to trend a little bit wetter rather than the frozen conditions. So GFS, I'm going to tell you, yesterday was throwing down some ridiculous amounts of snow. It is still putting down some significant amounts of snow, but I wouldn't necessarily call it ridiculous, because last week through the Arklatex, Central Arkansas, we verified with some 12 to 14 inch snows. And right now you can see the GFS is really kind of highlighting that area over southern parts of Arkansas. With yet another maybe foot of snow in some cases. But down here in southern Louisiana, we're really talking about more of maybe an inch or less. Again, this is according to the GFS. So for you folks that are really scared and you don't want the snowfall, you don't want the cold conditions, the models are actually a little bit more in your favor today. But for the folks that do want to see some winter weather and want to play in the snow, don't get your hope, don't lose hope just yet, because we are going to see some significant changes between now and the middle part of next week. One of the things that I did want to show you, though, this is a really neat thing. This is the SKU-T, and this is what the weather balloon does. But rather than the GFS can actually give you a forecast sounding, what it thinks the weather balloon would see as it went up. And as you can see on here, that temperature of 0 right there at the bottom, that is your freezing mark. So 0 degrees Celsius is freezing. And I know it's got a lot of lines and stuff on it, but you want to pay attention to this line right there. That is the line of 0 degrees. So everything over here is above freezing and everything over here is below freezing. And you can see that the surface temperature there is 34, which means anything that would fall would probably melt. But if you look just above the surface here, everything is to the left of that 0 degree mark. So just above the surface, temperatures are going to be below freezing. So that would support winter type of precip, but then the temperature at the ground is going to be just above freezing. That could still bring snow or sleet. I would say more snow, because it looks like more of the column is below freezing, except for right at the surface. Now, that would probably produce a little bit of accumulation on some grassy surfaces, but if the temperature stays above freezing, then you don't have to worry quite as much about the bridges and overpasses. So that's the GFS, and you've seen the difference between the three models, and we'll get another model run a little bit later this afternoon. So now we're going to focus on the Euro, and unfortunately the 12Z Euro from today does not seem to be coming down. I was really hoping to have that information. All the other models of 12Z are already done and completed, but for some reason the Euro model has not been produced, and so we're going to just kind of have to wait. And you have to remember the Euro model. So the GFS model goes out 16 days every model run, one after another after another. The Euro does a 16-day, and then it drops it back. I think it's a 10-day. Maybe less than that, actually. I think it's a 7-day. So it goes 16 days and it goes 7 days every other model run. So we have to go with the 12Z, the 0Z, the 12Z, and the 0Z to get that extended picture that's on there. So yesterday's 0Z, kind of like what the GFS was doing, was talking about a pretty good snowy, sleety, maybe some freezing rain period here across most of the Acadiana area. And then the one that ran overnight last night, again, this is through Friday morning, this is the one that ran overnight. You can see it's trending a little bit more wetter, but there is still some snow out there, but it doesn't have quite the coverage that the one that had from yesterday. So the GFS today is trending a little bit more wet, and the Euro is still trending with some winter type precip, just not as much and not as widespread, if that makes any sense. So we'll have to wait and see what the Euro for 12Z or the one that's going to run overnight tonight to get a little bit more information, because I like, just kind of like with hurricane season, I like to look model run to model run, and when you start to see more agreement between those runs, the more confidence you're going to have in your forecast. So the Euro right now is still producing some snow out there. And the possibility, now look, this is yesterday's, because remember the new one didn't come down today. So yesterday, kind of like yesterday's GFS, it was producing some pretty ridiculous amounts of snow. Is it possible that this could happen? Sure, but it's not very likely. And I was really hoping to have the 12Z model for today that would have given us these new storm totals. So once that does come down, I'm going to go ahead and post that on my social media pages so you can take a look at that. Also wanted to show you the sounding of the Euro. And again, this is from yesterday, but you can see there's that 0 degree mark, and pretty much from the surface, it's got us at 28 here. At the ground, and then everything above that really stays above or below freezing rather. So that is a snow outlook right there for sure. The entire column is below freezing, so that would be indicating a better chance for snow here. This is for Lafayette. So again, mid part of Acadiana, according to the Euro from yesterday, is still talking about snow. Now, these are what we call deterministic models. So it doesn't take into consideration variables. This is basically, the GFS and the Euro says this is what's going to happen at this particular time, and we're not looking at anything else. When you look at the Ensemble models, the Ensemble is really the same model, but it changes things here and there, because as you know, in weather, there's always something unexpected that could possibly happen. We could be talking about, oh my gosh, we're going to get 2-3 inches of snow, and then we end up getting just rain because something changed somewhere in the atmosphere. So the Ensemble models are really cool, because what they do is they tweak it a little bit here and there, and it gives you a whole bunch of different solutions of what's going to happen. And if you just kind of go through, and I know it's kind of hard to see these, but if you just go through them, so like number 1 is basically showing almost no precipitation. Same thing with number 2 and number 3, but then number 4 and 5, you're starting to get a little bit more winter precip in there. And then as you look at the next range, again, you got some drier stuff here in 6 and 7, and then you've got a couple of more here that are starting to get more wintry weather. But if you just kind of take an overall view, you got what, 1, let's see, 2, maybe I'll count them as 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We'll go with that one too. So almost half of them there are predicting the possibility of some snow here in Acadiana. So that, again, that's a pretty good indication that we're going to see at least some kind of winter weather here in the region. Now, here's what the averages show. So now I showed you those 20 runs. This is what the average of them all is when it comes to snowfall. And this is snow as well as sleet. So now you see that it really kind of backs off a little bit. And the Acadiana region, for the most part, is looking at 1 inch or less. So anything that's down here in the gray, that right there is about 1 inch or less. And you start to get to the 2, 3, 4, 5 inch range up here across parts of the Arklatex. So winter weather is probably going to be moving across the south. At this point, though, it's just still very uncertain of how much. The timing is still a little bit off, and then of course the location where you're going to be seeing the worst of this winter weather. Just for fun, we'll look at a couple of other global models here. This is the Canadian model, Tuesday night through Wednesday morning. This is actually, it looks like midnight Tuesday night going into Wednesday morning, and you can see the Canadian model has the low pretty far to the south, but the low really has a lot more moisture compared to the Euro and the GFS's last run. So this would indicate more of an ice storm over parts of Acadiana, with sleet and a mix over central Louisiana, and then snow farther to the north. That actually would be a worst case scenario for the Acadiana region, because an ice storm is the last thing you want, because that brings a whole bunch of different problems, not just traveling, but it starts to bring tree branches down. You start to talk about power outages. So this hopefully is not going to be what verifies. And then the Icon model, which again is not as trusted either, but this is, looks like this is 9 p.m. Tuesday night. Or no, this would be Tuesday afternoon, 3 p.m. Tuesday afternoon. So we're looking at Tuesday afternoon through about Wednesday morning. And the Icon model is predicting mostly snow for the Acadiana region. So if we go through the different 4 models, we've really got 4 different solutions. The Ensemble models have a number of different solutions. We are still a week out, so any one of those solutions is possible, and that's why it's really hard to grab onto a forecast right now. Some of the things, though, that we do know is it is going to be quite cold, and I have noticed that some of the temperatures have trended a little bit colder, so obviously you're going to need to bring in or protect the plants that are outside. They will not be able to survive unless they're cold weather tolerant. Most plants that are cold weather tolerant even can't go below maybe 26 or 27. So you are going to have to be taking care of your plants, either moving them in or getting them covered. And you want to try to get that done probably sometime Sunday. It's going to be cold and brisk on Sunday, but you don't want to keep your plants covered too long. But if you want to move them inside, they're going to be a little bit better there. Pipes. This time around, I think you might want to go ahead and get those pipes wrapped. Just because some of the forecast temperatures I've been seeing, even down to the I-10 corridor, getting down into the mid-20s. So if you do have exposed pipes, you want to make sure you insulate those. And this is something that you probably want to start to take care of here over the next couple of days while the weather is mild. It's going to make you a lot more comfortable. Of course, pets, they always enjoy being inside when the weather is cold. Make sure that if they are outside, make sure they have shelter, and also make sure that their water bowls are full of water that's not frozen. You want to make sure that they've got water to be able to drink and that they've got some good shelter so that they can keep themselves warm. And of course, check on your neighbors. Prepare for power outages. Maybe minimize your time outdoors. Make sure your car is ready to go. Again, you're going to be doing some preps here, and you're probably going to need to go to the grocery store and just get a few extra supplies here and there. But this is not like what you would need to do to prepare for a hurricane. Hopefully, this is going to be in and out of here within a few days. And if we do have to stay home, it's not going to be that long. So you don't need to go out and buy out all the toilet paper and all the bread. Don't go crazy out there. Get the things that you need that are going to be okay for a number of days, maybe 2 or 3 days. And you're probably going to be fine. Also, good thing, you can pre-cook some things, gumbo, soups, things like that too. And then, if you don't have enough room in your refrigerator or your freezer, what we like to talk about here at the Baker household is the outdoor fridge. Whenever everything gets cold, we got a table out in the back. So if we make a gumbo and it's going to be in the 30s at night, we just toss that thing out there and just let it stay in the outdoor refrigerator. So that is something that you can do too to save yourself a little bit of space. But again, don't necessarily go crazy on buying up everything. I don't think this needs to be a real panic buy this time around. But if you go grab a few things over the next couple of days and into the early part of the weekend, I think you'll probably be pretty much prepared for any of this cold weather to come on in. So that's your winter weather update. Again, today is January the 15th, and I'll have another update as conditions change. And you do want to, of course, follow my social media pages, both on Facebook and X. And I really would appreciate it if you like this video and also subscribe to my channel, and also turn on those notifications. That way you know when the next weather forecast comes down. I'm meteorologist Dave Baker. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, and I'll keep you updated on social media. We'll have Acadiana weather today, tomorrow morning around 7 o'clock, and more winter weather updates over the next several days. Have a great afternoon.